2 hours ago, the United States Army ordered between 2,000 and 3,000 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division to deploy to the Middle East. The soldiers are coming from the division's immediate response force, a brigade specifically designed to mobilize anywhere on Earth within 18 hours of an order. The deployment includes Major General Brandon Tegtmeyer, the division's commanding general, and his full divisional staff. It includes 2 battalions of approximately 800 soldiers each from the 1st Brigade Combat Team. And it arrives at a moment when the Trump administration is simultaneously claiming to be in peace talks with Iran and deploying the most combat-ready rapid response ground force in the United States Army. Trump said Monday he was not putting troops anywhere. The orders went out Tuesday. Trump said Monday he was in productive conversations toward a complete and total resolution. The 82nd Airborne was pulling out of a scheduled training exercise earlier this month, a quiet signal now confirmed that something larger was being planned. Combined with the 2 Marine Expeditionary Units already converging on the Persian Gulf from San Diego and Japan, the 82nd Airborne deployment could bring between 6,000 and 8,000 U.S. ground-capable troops into close proximity to Iran, on top of the 50,000 already in the theater as the war approaches its 1-month mark. The 82nd Airborne does not do peacekeeping. It does not do humanitarian missions. It does not escort convoys or guard embassies. It forces its way into contested territory. That is what it was built for, and that it is what it has done in every major U.S. military operation since World War II, and it is what its presence in the Middle East makes possible, whether or not that option is ever exercised. What the 82nd Airborne actually is, and why it doesn't do peacekeeping. The 82nd Airborne Division, based at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, is the United States Army's premier rapid deployment combat force. Its entire organizational design is built around one capability: the ability to seize and hold territory by parachuting soldiers directly into contested airspace, establishing a foothold, and enabling follow-on forces to land and expand operations. The division's immediate response force, the specific element being deployed, rotates between brigade combat teams and maintains a state of readiness that allows it to board aircraft within 18 hours of an order. The soldiers who received written orders Tuesday night were not on a training cycle. They were on alert. The difference is the difference between a fire department conducting drills and a fire department receiving a call. The last time the 82nd Airborne was deployed to the Middle East under comparable circumstances was in January 2020, after the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Then, approximately 3,500 paratroopers deployed as a deterrent force amid fears of Iranian retaliation. The 82nd's presence signaled to Tehran that the United States was prepared to respond to any escalation with immediate ground force. The current deployment mirrors that structure, but in a conflict that is already active, already killing Americans, and already consuming military resources at a pace that no one in Washington foresaw when the first bombs fell on February 28th. Atlantic Council analyst Alex Plitsas offered the clearest public assessment of what the force size actually signals. That force is not sufficient for a major invasion, nor to hold a single city. It says limited and targeted operations only. That framing is precise. The 82nd Airborne deployment is not an invasion force. It is an options generation force, a capability positioned in theater so that if Trump decides to authorize ground operations, the mechanism to execute them is already in place. From Kharg Island the target nobody is officially naming. The specific operation that has been most publicly discussed in connection with the 82nd Airborne and Marine deployments is Kharg Island. Kharg Island is a small strip of land in the Persian Gulf that functions as the loading terminal for approximately 90% of Iran's oil exports. It is not a military installation. It is an industrial facility, oil terminals, storage tanks, loading platforms. If the United States were to seize or blockade Kharg Island, it would effectively control the financial lifeline of the Iranian state far more directly than any air campaign has managed to do in 26 days of strikes. Stars and Stripes reported explicitly that one possible operation for 82nd Airborne soldiers and Marine infantry is seizing Kharg Island. Reuters reported last week that the Trump administration has discussed sending ground forces to the island, with one official describing the operation as very risky because Iran can reach it with missiles and drones. The risk assessment is not wrong. Kharg Island sits approximately 25 kilometers off the Iranian coast, well within the range of every weapon system Iran has used in this conflict. A ground force on Kharg would be a ground force under constant Iranian fire in a location that cannot be easily reinforced, with no natural defensive terrain. But the strategic logic is equally clear. Iran's primary leverage in this conflict, its ability to sustain resistance against overwhelming American air power, derives from two things: its willingness to accept casualties, and its ability to threaten the global energy supply through Hormuz. Seizing Kharg eliminates the second leverage point without requiring control of the strait itself. It does not open Hormuz, but it gives Washington something to trade. Return Kharg when Iran opens Hormuz. That negotiating dynamic does not exist in an air-only campaign. Whether Kharg is actually the target remains unconfirmed. But the force now assembling in the region, paratroopers who jump into contested territory, Marines who land on beaches, mine-sweeping ships in Singapore, the division commander himself deploying, describes a military posture that is not defensive. Ghalibaf's warning. And why it comes from the backchannel contact. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who according to Axios, was also the person Trump's envoys were using as a backchannel contact, responded to the deployment news directly and in public. Tehran is closely monitoring all U.S. movements in the region, especially troop deployments, Ghalibaf said Wednesday, warning Washington against sacrificing American soldiers for what he called Netanyahu's delusions. That statement is significant for two reasons. First, it names the deployment explicitly. Iran is aware of it and is characterizing it as a threat that will be met with force if acted upon. Second, it comes from the same official who, according to U.S. sources, is the person in contact with Trump's team through Pakistani intermediaries. Ghalibaf is simultaneously the back-channel contact and the voice publicly warning against the deployment he is presumably also hearing about through that channel. The Iran war has always contained contradictions, bombing while claiming victory, threatening while claiming talks, deploying while claiming no ground troops. The 82nd Airborne deployment is the sharpest version yet of that structural contradiction. The administration that claims to be in productive conversations toward a complete and total resolution ordered its most rapid response combat division into the theater on the same day those conversations were being described as a breakthrough. Trump did not rule out ground troops when asked directly on Tuesday. He said, "We'll do whatever is necessary." That non-denial is the most precise statement he has made about the 82nd Airborne's purpose. The soldiers know it. Ghalibaf knows it. The markets, which barely reacted to the deployment news while rallying on the talks announcement, then may be the last institution yet to price in what whatever is necessary actually means. 2 hours ago, 2,000 to 3,000 American paratroopers received written orders to deploy to the Middle East. The division's commanding general is going with them. The immediate response force can be anywhere on Earth in 18 hours, and the president who ordered them has not ruled out putting them anywhere.